Going live. We're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this emergency election broadcast. Canadian Bitcoiners Unite plus Jasmine Lane in the house. We got Sunny Ray. We got Jania. We got BTC Brad, aka Brad Mills. How are we doing tonight, guys?
Doing good. Optimistic.
I like that.
Jasmine,
I just listened to Jasmine's podcast with Pierre and Anna, so I'm feeling really good after that. I just finished it about 20 minutes ago. Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Interview.
So
Yeah,
how did that go? How did that all come about, Jasmine?
That was like 7 months in the making, but honestly, I think it was kind of like the bigger I got, and my platforms, obviously, the closer we've gotten to this election, have just exploded. But the more I started networking and building relationships with different people, but quite literally, I had planted the seed, was waiting for it to be watered for a while there, and it wasn't. The seed was starting to decay for a while. I was getting a little disappointed, but I quite literally got a text message at like 10:30 p.m. on Saturday from Pierre Poilievre's communication director, who just said, "We're on." And then she called me almost immediately afterwards and said, and she's like, "Hey, can you be in Toronto on Monday?" And I'm like, "I'm booking a flight right now." Yes. And boom, that was it. So it's kind of wild how it happened. But yeah, I don't know. Networking is everything, I guess.
Well, you've just been doing a really great job too of consistently creating kind of honest content. And I think people appreciate that, especially considering like we're in such a vacuum and having just participated in the American election cycle down here, the parallels are out of control. Like the only difference is Pierre has not done the independent media circuit like Trump did down here. Like Trump hit them all. Trump also just called them out. Fake news, like sister news, fake news, super bold. But in Canada, there's this thing. It's like, man, like if you do anything like Trump does, it's like you're just like according to the media, and this is their spin, this is their attack. This is what the Chinese kind of have consulted on. It's just label them all like Trump. And the last couple of days, I've been really fired up because it became really clear to me that Mark Carney is the CBDC candidate, and he will bring about the central bank digital currency. This guy's a central banker, folks. Like Bank of Canada, Bank of England. Like the Bank of England, America is independent because of the authoritarianism and the actions of the Bank of England. That's what led to it all. And and Donald Trump said, no, we ain't doing no CBDCs. He signed an executive order for that. So like, not everything the guy does is necessarily bad. But here in Canada, what I was hoping tonight that we could go over is the state of Bitcoin and understanding, this is, from my perspective, this is centralization versus decentralization. And personally, I don't think Pierre is like the greatest. He doesn't walk on water. He's not incredible. But Mark Carney literally represents the system more than anything, and Pierre is the best one. Plus, Pierre actually listens and talks to people, and I know that within that crew, there is a level of listening and access versus Mark Carney. Like, you want access to Mark Carney, you got to be in Bilderberg, WEF, Trilateral, CFR, etc. And like, guess what, folks? We ain't in there. Canadians aren't in there. So I'll land there.
I wanted to say, and this was just a thought that came up when you were talking about it in the beginning, but it is so fascinating to see the way that Canadian politicians and just Canadian citizens in general, it's like you walk on so many eggshells with the risk of anything being compared to Donald Trump. And it's the most absurd thing in the world because like, Canadian conservatives are probably just the most legitimate libertarian group, if anything. Like they are so not far right. They are so not Republican. They are so not there. Like they're actually just a pretty center, normal, everyday person thinking type of a group in so many ways. Yet you have all the, like, even with Pierre, he had talked about Bitcoin once upon a time. And then now, well, we can't talk about that because, you're Trump. It's like, what? Like, it just makes no sense to me at all. It's unreal. And then also with Mark Carney, it's like, I was always under the impression that liberals hated elitists and that liberals were like really against people that are like Mark Carney. and that they don't like that stuff, but now they do like it because it's smart. What's happening here?
We went from electing the drama teacher to the economist. And funny how that switch happens over over a few years.
Well, and it's also kind of funny on that point that most media sources criticize Pierre for Trumpism and all this stuff. And, I see this all the time on my Facebook feeds. My friends are being like propagandized to and fed disinformation and bad ideas. And they say it to each other. They believe it's true. It's this common knowledge thing that, is a manipulation tactic that they masterfully employ on people who aren't really deeply following the information. It's common knowledge that conservatives want to go after abortion. It's everybody knows that the conservatives are going to raise the retirement age to 67. It's like all these things are like old baggage that legitimately we used to have these concerns. Me, like I used to be, on the left, I would say, in terms of I voted for Trudeau in 2015, and I never wanted to associate really with a conservative, like not even Harper days. And Harper, back then, because I was like, there's a lot of religious baggage. There's a lot of yes, I'm more of a social progressive, so I don't really want to associate with all that stuff. But that's 420,000 people joined the Conservative Party in 2022 to vote for Pierre because he inspires us to unite together. And the center sort of came together and remade the Conservative Party, I believe. So I don't think it was a bunch of religious nuts and abortion lovers and all this stuff that are people that want to take away your abortion rights that joined the party. That wasn't the movement that Pierre created. It was a centrist movement, and people just haven't caught up to that. There's a lot of normal Canadians that are just sick of being told what they can and can't do and have the government in every piece of their lives, that don't want to be arrested for posting memes like here in the UK or in Europe or something. That's what the conservative movement is. It's just people want the government out of their lives, and they want to be able to get back to being able to afford to live without having to be told what to think and controlled what you're saying.
Yeah, I think just quickly on that, it's become very clear over the last, I'd say probably 60 days, 70 days, that there's a very obvious dividing line in Canada between, and I don't want to make this like a intergenerational type of argument or ageist argument, but there's a very real dividing line between people that are literally glued to CBC, CP24, CTV, Global News, and those that can watch that and not take that information in, but also are able to consume alternative media sources and come up with their own, judgments and opinions. And it's it's so obvious who is consuming which side, and you can tell just by how the demographic split on the vote is. And I think the overarching point on this is I don't think there's any amount of objective evidence that you can present to the people that are literally just glued to CBC to get them to look at the other side, because I actually don't even even just being charitable, I don't even think they're interested in that. They're just well, we're this is our comfort zone, and we're comfortable with these opinions because that's what we're used to and that's what we want to believe, versus we want to spend some extra time trying to engage with the other side. And it's it's fully reflected in the polls now, right? And that's kind of scary, right? Because we could sit here and talk about all these facts and spit all this game about.
Well, and Jenya, you just wrote an article too, highlighting a bunch of the key facts. Maybe we can I'd like to pull that up if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So this was one of the stats that we were just discussing before. Is the severe decline in entrepreneurship in Canada. And Brad, I'm sure this is something you recognize as well, as an investor and an entrepreneur yourself too, right?
Yeah, I mean, this goes along with the kind of climate activism, ESG stuff that Mark Carney famously worked so hard to try to get all these large asset management firms like BlackRock and Vanguard and Brookfield to adopt these ESG policies. But Canada was basically the testing ground. We're the guinea pigs of let's see how much we can stimulate our economy based on government jobs and handicap our energy sector and blockade our, Alberta and keep them from having their ability to export oil. And we were a guinea pig, and you can see it in both the GDP chart and this entrepreneurship chart. I was talking to Sonny earlier today, actually, and, it took from Canada's creation until like basically 2015 for Canada to have 250,000 federal employees, and Trudeau added 110,000 federal employees in his 9 years. So our debt grew by like 30 to 40%, and our government bureaucracy grew by 30 to 40%. And you can see our GDP, our real nominal, like our real term GDP is stagnant. And that goes perfectly along with the idea that, like, to get us out of COVID, they injected epinephrine into the economy by hiring a whole bunch of new government employees to make it look like we were recovering. But really what we were doing was just kind of creating a whole bunch of make work government jobs and funding it with the money printer. So yeah, like in one way, entrepreneurship has declined, but there's the chart right there. That's the main one. It's the one that shows the public sector growth and the entrepreneur and self-employment just stagnating, falling off a cliff during COVID, and then not even really recovering yet. And that is a really concerning trend.
And and I want to also, do we rock, paper, scissors?
No, go ahead.
I was going to add to that too. Even Mark Carney's platform that he announced in his budgets and whatever, it's 50% of that. I think it's more than 50% of that. It's not going into fueling anything that'll be investment or private sector related or even self-employment related. Every single thing that he has announced are things that are it's capital projects. It's things that are enhancing the state. It's things that are expanding the state, not things that are helping independence in Canada or just the regular citizen either. And that's something that's so very important to note when he sits and talks about it. Oh, it's so great. We're doing all these things to enhance Canada's economy. Well, what are you doing? You look at those numbers, and one by one, every single one of those things is just for a larger and larger government, for more bureaucracy. And it really is just all about centralizing power even more, which makes perfect sense if you look at Mark Carney's track record and consider all of the ways that he, his wife, and his daughter Cleo have been involved in that. That's been their entire life, really, has been to influence government for their own gain. And now here he is the policy maker, and look at what he's already planning to do, influence the government for all of the new policy decisions that will enhance what all of his previous ties were, and realistically what his ties are going to be as soon as he leaves. So this is just like an absolute jackpot for him. And it's really disappointing to see this happen and to know how few people are actually paying attention to the severity of this and what it actually means.
Yeah, 100%. And, just to go back to like the whole private sector, public sector employment split, like it's kind of crazy, like just on the surface of it, it just objectively look at the numbers of the fact that like 25% of the Canadian workforce, 1 in every 4 people that is employed right now is employed by the government. Like that's insane. Like this is like bordering socialist level,
Is that
employment.
Real? Is that true? That sounds crazy.
I think we might be misreading the data here a little bit.
That's what the chart says. Like I'm sure there might be like some like differential and a few percentage points up and down. Like let's be charitable and say it's 20%. 1 in every 5 people is tied in some way to public sector jobs. Like that's still pretty insane. That's also like it's not great. It's just bloat, and it's more justification for the increase of the size of the government, and it does nothing to incentivize private sector or self-employment. Like it's like a self-perpetuating machine for the government, right? And they're going to do like insofar as you want to maintain these numbers, you're going to justify more spending and more bullshit programs that don't accomplish anything. They're like make work projects, right? And they're just inflating the the employment numbers.
Agreed.
Wait, what? Jenya, what does that graph say? Go back.
I got ChatGPT deep research going on this right now, so we can get a quick fact check.
No, self-employed. I don't get it. Why is it at 0? Can you hear me?
So
Yep.
we can hear you, Sonny. So I think this is the percentage change since 2014. So in 2014, they're all at zero. So they're all the same. So since 2014, we've seen, I don't really understand because it's a net positive all across the board. But
Yeah, I think I get it.
So
obviously
what
self-employed
this
is not
chart
doing well.
what this chart shows is that stimulus and growth of the government bureaucracy was our economic growth engine since the pandemic, because you can see during the pandemic when the lockdowns came in and they shot everybody's business down, mass unemployment happened. It was Great Depression levels of joblessness or jobless claims, and you see the private sector drop off a cliff. Self-employed people, obviously they're still going to be self-employed, so you don't see that drop significantly, but the trend drops because people start getting CERB checks, people start getting these small business loans that put them in more debt. The private sector rebounds, but the public sector keeps getting boosted by more stimulus, more deficit spending. At one point Trudeau hired 13,000 CRA employees so that he could process all the CERB applications, hired all these employees, and then the next week he says, everybody's going to get it. So like, why did we hire 13,000 more CRA employees? Well, it looks good on your GDP numbers and your budget to say, well, look at all the jobs we added. Canada's recovering. We knew we were going to help you recover. Look at our growth numbers. But really the growth is all just epinephrine shot into the economy because it's temporary. And it's like you use epinephrine to kind of stabilize the patient so you can address the underlying problem. But what they just kept doing is just keep shooting needles into the economy, and they didn't actually address the problem. And the problem is this: self-employment has stagnated, and the private sector has kind of grown, but like not nearly as much as the public sector. So it's just more bureaucracy.
I know this is something that like Harley Finkelstein and like Tobias Lutke, like the founders of Shopify, like they've starting to get louder and louder about. There's just not enough innovation happening. And, Brad, you touched on it. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second here. Brad, you really touched on it too. Or I think Jenya as well. We talked about the talent flight out of Canada. We do such a good job at training. We also have subsidies for small businesses and research and development. So in Canada, we try to attract innovators, and we have these two programs. One's called IRAP, the other one's called SRED. And this is basically the government will pay you back for unique engineering and research that you do. And there's no obligation. So we subsidize a lot of this development. But then as soon as you make it, the tax system in Canada, the burden, the pressure, it's not realistic. It's not the smart decision to stay there any longer. Combine it with increasing authoritarianism and general morale issues, as well as a highly conflicted, angry population. People want to get out of there, and just taxes alone. And this is why Pierre talking about we're going to do a 15% income tax cut, that's a great start. And I'll say the thing about the tariffs that Trump's ultimately getting to with the tariffs isn't about some of it's about protecting industry and trying to encourage industry in America, but it's about my perspective, and after talking to some of the lobbyists in the space, it's about offsetting the income tax, because the income tax is on its way out. Its temporary time frame is coming to an end, hopefully, and by freeing us from that, we can really unleash radical growth and prosperity. But you need to offset it from somewhere. So the tariffs kind of work. And Canada has a history of tariffs. It's a good method. And then potentially a consumption tax as well. So I think let's at least have some open discussions around this now. But we're calling this an emergency broadcast. I know a couple of people have been asking about that. What's the emergency? The real emergency is we've got there's just two candidates. One of them has the Trudeau, the liberal machine, propaganda machine, running in full force, coming in, as Jenya said, he's an economist, he's qualified, he has a terrific resume, everybody's going crazy about Mark. Mark, oh, he's so good. He's so. But guess what? He is just a new front man, a new figure of this, but he is also a central banker. And it's the same cast of characters. It's the same managerial crew that for the last 10 years has really not been a friend towards the progress of Canada, as all those charts have just shown us. And the second part of this title is Canadian Bitcoiners Unite, because all four of us, Jasmine excluded on the panel here, have been in Bitcoin for over a decade in Canada. And 10 years ago, it was still a small thing and the government wasn't anywhere there. But the last 10 years has not been, Canada has not done great action to support the industrial development. Canada was a leader. Ethereum was birthed out of Canada. Like so much Bitcoin activity, so much innovation,
we
much.
Apologize for that.
So much creation came out of here, and yet, like Pierre Poilievre, yes, he's a Bitcoiner, y'all. And he called when did he say that Bitcoin was like, when did he first publicly say that Bitcoin like Bitcoin?
I remember, I think back in like, no, like I think in like 2020 or 21.
I thought it was 2021.
Yeah, he was
right after the spike.
Yeah, he was on with oh my god, I forget the Tahini's guy. I forget his name. The guy from London. They did the podcast where they were like smoking the hookah. They were talking shop. I remember this shit. This is like a few years ago, and then Trudeau was trying to rail him in Parliament for like, oh my god, this guy supports Bitcoin.
Well, he called the top a little bit. He called the top, and it then became an easy attack.
Yeah.
When he called it at 60, and then it's at 20. It's like, well, if you had listened to Pierre and you put your life savings in it, you would be down 70%. You fucking idiot. But then, now we look where we are and we look at where we've been talking about it all along the way. I mean, I remember talking to the Bank of Canada about adding it as a reserve to the reserves after they sold all the gold. And they laughed at me. I remember talking to the Ontario pension plan about it. This is literally the pension. Their whole purpose is to protect the wealth of Canadians. They said, oh, it's a good idea to hold it, but there's too much reputational harm in doing this. Well, again, it's like, that's this, like, they're worried about the reputation. They're worried about how they look versus actually standing on principles when they really understood it. And I think a lot of us, and this is why it's kind of annoying that he hasn't talked too much about Bitcoin, because Trump and Kennedy down here talked about Bitcoin a lot. Talked about establishing a national Bitcoin reserve, a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Like Canada, we don't need to buy Bitcoin. We have so much fucking energy. We can mine Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like we can. We could do so well. But now I talked to some of the cats in Ottawa, and they're like, oh yeah, no, they're not allowing any extra energy into projects. Like energy is like a capped resource. We're not going to increase the amount of energy. So it's just like the policies are really back-ass words right now.
Can somebody explain Bitcoin to me, please? I'm just going to be that person. I understand y'all are like, oh my God.
Can I take a stab at it?
I straight up, I don't get it. I've been told that people scam you if you have Bitcoin. There's grandparents or something who are losing all kinds of money to Bitcoin. But I do know that there's a Bitcoin machine that got set up outside of Shoppers Drug Mart across the street from where I live. What is the deal with this? Help me out here. And yes, I'm dumb, whatever. I know it's been around for forever and I just know nothing. It's fine. Go off.
Bitcoin is the world's first open source, decentralized digital currency and payment network. So the reason people find it confusing is because it's actually two things in one. It's a digital currency analogous to dollars, rupees, maybe even gold, right? So it has a certain value, but it's like a payment network, kind of like Visa, PayPal, Rails for sending value from one place to another. But Bitcoin has some really, really interesting characteristics about it that, our fiat system doesn't. For example, the people that we're talking about on this show, Mark Corney, the guy, he is really good at printing money. Well, guess what? In Bitcoin, you can't just endlessly print. There's a limited number of it, like the number is 21 million. And everyone knows that that's the case, and everyone can verify it because it's all open source. The other thing about Bitcoin is it's decentralized. So there is no CEO, there's no company, there's no person that runs Bitcoin. It's literally this like code base that just exists online that's managed by a community of people who just, through free will choose to participate in this economy. It's the best performing asset that the humankind has ever seen. It's outperformed everything in the last 10 years. And whereas why is that? Because because we need a form of money that cannot be inflated away, right? And gold played that role for 10,000 years before the kind of the fiat system that we have today. But gold has flaws, right? What happened with gold the last time around? They came and took it. If I have a bunch of gold, I'm sitting in India and you're in New York, and I want to send you some, I can't. I gotta wait till Monday. I gotta go and sell that gold. So gold is good, but I think where this eventually goes is you need to kind of go deeper into what is money, right? So once you can define what is money, and it comes down to like there's these 6 or 7 kind of things that make money, right? Is it scarce, right? So that's one of the qualities. Is it divisible? Is it fungible? Is it recognizable? And like this, there's about 6 or 7 characteristics. And when you look at those characteristics and you compare it to, let's say fiat, and you look at the gold, and you look at the Bitcoin, you see the Bitcoin checks off on almost all of the boxes, except for maybe having a long, kind of history. So Bitcoin is, in short, it's the future of money. In my view, it is freedom. And yeah, to me, it's like every time you buy a little bit of Bitcoin, you're buying freedom. I don't know, Brad, take a stab at it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Is there like big risk for fraud or lack of transparency if that were to be something? Let's say all governments get involved big time in Bitcoin. Like how would that look in terms of transparency, or like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm an idiot, so help me out.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, these are great questions. It's kind of like a knife, right, or something. You can use a knife to cut a steak, or you can use it to kill somebody. You can use. It's the future of money, right? So money can be used to perhaps fund some sort of nefarious activity, or it can be used to help your grandmother out when she's in trouble. So it really depends on the person.
There's Bitcoin scammers who say that they're doing that, and then they scam grandma out of a bunch of money. I hear that all the time in the news.
Bad guys were the first to adopt the internet, well before many others.
Okay.
Bad guys, they'll use cell phones to communicate between each other, but it doesn't make cell phones bad, right? So Bitcoin's in that similar camp. It's neutral technology, but again, see, I actually don't blame anybody on earth for the problem that we're in. I think the problems are systemic, right? I think the fiat system that we live in is corrupt. It just, I don't know about you, but like when I first heard about how the money system works, when people like Ron Paul and these like great educators of our time have come forward and talked about and educated the world about, the history of money, I was like flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that, we lived in this system, right? 2008, Wall Street, all this stuff that had happened. I think they were pointing at the problem, but they didn't really offer a solution. Bitcoin, in my view, is that answer. Today, by the way, I barely go on Bitcoin rants anymore because now the writing's on the wall. Like the United States, the nation state, is adopting Bitcoin as a reserve status, right? You've got BlackRock, the biggest companies in the world now, seeing the light. You've got the best performing stocks like MicroStrategy, MetaPlanet. I mean, Elon Musk. I mean, on and on and on. They've all seen the light. And again, in short, it's the future of money. It will eat everything else. And we're like literally at like inning number 1.
I have to ask, just because I got this comment on YouTube, somebody wrote, what happens to Bitcoin when a solar storm takes out the grid, computers, and satellites?
I think we have way bigger problems to worry about.
I guess we'll all be dead, right? So
yeah, and this is like a common, it's a common thing people bring up is like, what if the internet goes down, bro? If the internet goes down, you're gonna have a lot more shit to worry about than what's happening with my Bitcoin. Like, there's gonna be a lot bigger issues. So, and not to give like a wishy-washy answer, but like, yeah, sure, you're not gonna be able to transact if things aren't connected.
Technically, the only way that Bitcoin like really disappears if it's simultaneously their power goes off everywhere and every single hard drive that has a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain gets wiped. All and like there's literally no more record of it. Bitcoin blockchain is stored all around the world. There's all sorts of backups being stored in space. It's on satellites. It's in basements. It's in bunkers. It's underground. It's on top of mountains. It's in the sky. Like
It's in your head. You know, all
I
you
wanted
need to do
to
is
say also,
remember.
thank you, Sunny, for the description and explainer there. That was helpful.
Yeah, that was
Hey
great.
guys, yeah, I wanted to share a couple of things. Yeah, just on a more positive note. I know we're here like kind of shitting on Canada, but I wanted to express something. So I was, like I said, ready to leave the country during the COVID times. I was, like I was asleep at the wheel. It was Kyle and a couple others that had woke me up. But once I woke up, I was ready to bounce until the truckers woke up. And to this day, I will remember that, like till the day I die type of thing. Yeah, like that was like Canada Day times 1,000. And I believe the truckers are monumental. They're like so pivotal in the whole thing, because if you look at the whole COVID hysteria, it was literally like kind of stopped in its tracks because of those guys. Okay, RFK talked about his orange pilling at the Bitcoin conference, and he literally attributed to the truckers and the single mom in Canada that had her bank account shut as a result of why he believes in Bitcoin. And by the way, Jasmine, you're going to keep hearing about crazy things that are awesome. Bitcoin is censorship resistant. So some of the truckers that got money in Bitcoin, they were, people were having their bank account shut down left, right, and center. GoFundMe accounts were being shut down. But guess what? Bitcoin, people who use Nunchuk, people who use these like self-custodial solutions, they couldn't get it shut. And there's like this famous story, you can look into it later, where they pretty much sent a letter, the government sent a letter to Nunchuk, and Nunchuk was like, dude, like you don't even know what you're talking about. We can't, take these people's money away because they own their own money, right? And whereas people with the money in their own bank account, we were waking up to the fact that they don't. So RFK was orange pilled by the truckers here in Canada. Trump, arguably, partially his orange pilling was done by RFK. So there's something going on in Canada. Number two, Bitcoin. Yeah, we said Ethereum was born here, but Brad and I this morning talked about how in Canada has the most number of Bitcoiners per capita, right? And if you look at the amount of money that each of those Bitcoiners have, it's greater than even the United States. It's actually quite surprising. And I've worked for a lot of companies in the Bitcoin space. I have some information there, right? Number three, what's the big renaissance that's happening in the world right now? AI. We said, no one innovates here. Yes, they do. Innovation only happens here. What do you mean? AI was born at University of Toronto by Ilya Sutskever and his professor, Geoffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize. AI was born here. And the best Bitcoiners in the world, Francis and NVK, they're all from here, right? BTC Sessions, They're all from here. Canada is ground zero for Bitcoin. Canada's ground zero for AI. Now, we have a tough time capturing that value, right? I think we do a piss poor job of that. And that's something that I think we can work on. Brad, I think, has some really awesome suggestions. Let's keep going. Biggest landmass, right? Or one of the maybe top two. We've got tremendous natural resources. Hello, we've got human resources. We've got natural resources. And the only thing we have in our way is like essentially CBC, right? I mean, BlackBerry, what preceded iPhone, right? BlackBerry, we started that smartphone revolution, right? Mm-hmm. So let's not discount Canadians. I think we've got not just intelligence, but we've got courageous people, right? Like the truckers, like the entrepreneurs in this space that are willing to stand up. And look, at this point in time, I mean, it's just a matter of time. I know a lot of people that were hardcore liberals that are now like obviously on the other side. They all get it, right? I say we just, lend a loving hand and just, I was trying to think this morning, is how do we show up on CBC? Like maybe there's some sort of like friendly gesture that we can maybe send them some flowers or something. I don't know, but wouldn't it be nice to have like a conversation on, like we're just speaking to our own people right now.
That's exactly how it should be. That's exactly how it should be. It's actually rather unfortunate that it's not like that. It's actually, and I have to share this story now, but my background is in media. I worked in media for 11 years. I've never been employed by CBC, but I have been on segments in the CBC before or on CBC. And it's so fascinating to me, the amount of people since I left the space, which was about 9 months ago now, who say like, wow, like, this is so crazy. They must have gotten rid of you because of all of your thoughts. And wow, everybody else there is so crazy. I'm like, no, do you want to know what the craziest part is? Is like, I would say probably about 80% at least of the hosts that you see on CBC, on CTV, on all of these really popular networks, I have had conversations with them over the years about the exact same stuff I talk about on my show, and everybody agrees. We're all on the same page, but they literally cannot say it because they will lose their job. And it is just so unreal.
Okay, so can we talk about one obvious campaign point that's, you know, it's very clearly struck a nerve with a lot of folks, is like the whole defund CBC thing, right? Like, you know, listen, we don't have to go that far, and believe me, I'm no fan of the CBC, and I'm certainly no fan of, you know, kind of the state propaganda octopus machine. But like, the reality is, like, yeah, you look at, you know, and I hate even spending my time trying to, like, you know, look at the coverage of the election by like CTV, CBC, Global News, you know, CP24.
CTV isn't as bad.
But it's okay. It's sure they're not as bad. I might be lumping them in with the bad apples, but like, let's be real. Like, you know, it's very hard, you know, as even if you're not on the conservative side, let's say you're just like, you're an objective person, you're trying to identify what the issues are on both sides. It's really fucking hard to look at any one of those news networks or the Toronto Star or the Globe and get an unbiased opinion. Like, it is so clearly dripping with bias that like it's basically bordering on propaganda. And I'm not saying this to like to be salacious or whatever. It's just like, that's just what it is, right? And it's just very hard to be sympathetic to any of these organizations. So then, you know, when Pierre says let's defund them, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we don't have to shut them down, but like, maybe let's cut 50, 60, 75% of the funding. And then like, you can be a private organization and you can do what you want. And if people are into your thing, great. If you can attract advertisers, great. But the fact that like, you have the biggest media organizations that are literally plugged into all the major demographics pushing a one-party narrative, that's a fucking problem. Like, no one's getting any balanced opinions here, and you have to literally go out of your way to get anything outside of what the status quo, you know, perspective is. And like,
and that's if you're even willing to do that.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. And then like, it's like, okay, fine, I consume it, and then okay, I don't agree with it, where do I find the other stuff? Like, there's so many steps to even get to the other side that it's like, fine, you know, like, as much as I want to talk shit about like, and I'm upset about like all the boomers being like, oh, pro Carney, all this shit. Like, yeah, I'm fucking upset because like, it's not going to be in our favor if they all vote in that direction. But also, I'm kind of like, part of me is like sympathetic, like, yeah, like, you're old, it's going to take a lot of effort to like go and like seek out all this information and change my perspective. Like, it's not great. And so just to land the plane here, it's like, the media landscape is fucking terrible. And like, I'm not saying let's go defund everyone, but like, let's at least level the playing field.
Someone just said, I'm a boomer, kiss my ass, dude.
I certainly
a hard time.
Oh, I certainly agree with you there. I think one of the most important things to differentiate here, though, is that defund the CBC does not mean CBC will no longer exist. It means that CBC will have to be competitive and get advertisers like every other media company does in the country. A lot of those other media companies, they do receive government subsidies to some capacity. And those are fine for the most part because they're low. Like, they're big amounts of money, but in the grand scheme of things, they are low. And yes, media, especially in rural communities, French-speaking communities, stuff like that, it's important to have. Of course it is. And it's a service that absolutely does do good work from time to time. CBC, I'm not really on board with that one. But I think the bottom line when it comes to CBC in particular is that they receive so much money. And worse than the fact that they receive so much money is that they pay themselves the biggest bonuses ever with that money. That is probably because right there, it's like, okay, so obviously you're getting too much money from us because we know that you're not getting that same money from ad sales. That's not happening. They've actually had tons of ad slots. And I think for myself too, because I'm familiar with the industry, I've noticed their like commercial islands that they have, they don't really have any. Like, people are not buying ads on CBC anymore. In the city that I live in, CBC talk radio, at least, is not even on the top 12 list of stations in the city. But the stations that aren't publicly funded but with taxpayer dollars are on those lists. And at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to lose their job. I also think, though, that it would be really amazing and cool if you could have people who worked in an industry who could say what they think and didn't have to be on the side of the hand that feeds them by default. And, you know, it'd be very different if we were paying them as much as we are, and in return, we were getting like very great coverage where they had people like us joining them to share a different perspective, where they were covering like full-blown world news, and moreover, where they were covering things and not pretending to not have a bias. That's probably one of the biggest things too. It's different if you're outright about your bias. And I get this all the time where people, oh, well, you're a conservative, so I don't trust your content. And I'm like, me outlining my bias lets you know where I'm likely going to lean on an issue. And me outlining my bias does not negate the need for accuracy in a story. And if I happen to get something wrong or I glaze over something, it's probably because of my bias that I already laid out for you, and you can call me out on that and discern the information that I'm giving you, knowing what that bias is. And it's okay to have a bias, by the way, we all do. And with CBC, I think one of the most harmful impacts is that they claim they do not have a bias and then proceed to tell you exactly what their bias is in all of their content. But for the average person, especially people who are older, perhaps, that are watching that, you don't know that. And so you genuinely think in most cases that you're getting a full picture, and you're left with this impression of, whoa, wow, the conservatives are just right-wing radical extremists. Whoa, that's the full picture, because that's the unbiased news. No, it's not. And so that, I just think, is so harmful. But at the end of the day, I'm not anti-subsidies for things like that. I think certainly they can be helpful. They employ an awful lot of people. It does not need to be enough, though, to essentially pay your entire bills. Like, that's crazy. And you should be competitive. You can get advertisers. You guys have kick-ass sales teams. So you know what? If you're employing sales teams, why don't you tell them to do better, perhaps, and do their job so that they can sell for you? And like any other business, you adapt and you adjust, and you can be a phoenix out of the ashes when you're given that opportunity sometimes. So I think it's about time that they get that, truly. And I say that as being somebody who used to be in the industry. End rant.
Brad.
I did a little bit of research on CBC because my sister is a documentary filmmaker, and I'm the executive producer on her last documentary about Sable Island. It's the story of this woman who's an environmentalist and a conservationist, and she's lived on the island her whole life. Cataloging all the pollution, like the plastics and stuff that wash up onto the island, and the wild horses that live there. And we actually finished the film with Bitcoin financing. So we borrowed against the Bitcoin to finish the film, and Sundance was one of the producers of the film. So you know, I've been having these conversations with these, like, you know, people that are in these circles that are typically super left wing. And I have a lot of friends that are like employed by CBC in some way, and my sister received some CBC funding for that documentary. It ended up getting all these awards, won all over the world, and CBC picked it up. So like for me, like I come at it from that exact same perspective, where I feel like the threat to our democracy is much more dangerous than some people losing some funding, and we need to fix that. But it is a concern among a lot of people in the industry. So I looked into it because I have a lot of friends that are kind of in that industry, and I wanted to be empathetic and kind of see their perspective. And one time I wrote on one of my friend's Facebook posts, he's like, "Oh, I support the CBC." I'm like, "Dude, only boomers watch CBC." And he's like, "I'm not a boomer. I love CBC." And then like 10 people joined in. They're like, "I like CBC. I'm 30. So I was like, are they gaslighting me? Like, is this actually the stats wrong? So anyways, here's some stats that I found because I had to go really research into it. CBC News audience, you know, so you break it in between CBC and news and CBC entertainment. So CBC News is down 52% since 2014. Only 300,000 Canadians watch CBC nightly news. CTV has 1 million nightly viewers, and even that sucks. So CBC News captures just 2% of TV viewers in Canada. It's insignificant, basically. Significant older view slant, it's 50 plus. Fewer than 17% of people our age, like millennials and Gen Zs, watch CBC. And younger Canadians overwhelmingly get their news from social media, YouTube, podcasts, and stuff like that. And conservatives, obviously, this one's no surprise, they're much less likely to trust the CBC News. Only 49% trust CBC, compared to 80 to 90% of Liberals and NDP who trust it. But even they admit in surveys that there's a left-wing bias. So even the supporters of the CBC, when anonymously surveyed, admit there's a left-wing bias. So clearly this is not just something that the conservatives are thinking. With the CBC entertainment trends, viewership is also down 51% since 2015. And top CBC shows get like 500,000 views, and way less popular than CTV and Global, which get like 2 million views on their shows. CBC Gem is nothing. It's very tiny, 1 million monthly users, compared to Netflix, which is like 60% of Canadians' homes have Netflix subscriptions. And it was actually when they lost the NHL contract that they started to go downhill. So that's not the conservatives' fault that they lost the freaking NHL contract. And it's extremely limited youth appeal. Younger Canadians obviously prefer streaming platforms like Disney and just going on TikTok and YouTube. So the other thing about the funding history, people are just not aware that the biggest cut to the CBC was actually done under Chrétien. It was 30% reduction in their budget. So the Liberals cut the CBC bigger than any conservative ever has in the past. So it's not just a partisan thing. Like when your money is devaluing and you need to bring in some common sense into the budget, you have to start cutting. So, Liberals have cut, conservatives have cut, and we're at this point where like we're basically bankrupt and we need to start cutting. Then there's obviously there's a bunch more stuff here, but the one thing is that like CBC provides only 5 to 7% of Canadian film and TV funding annually. Because I had someone who was telling me like once the CBC is defunded or if it's reduced at all, then all of a sudden we're going to see major layoffs and the Canadian film and television industry is going to be destroyed and everybody's going to be unemployed. So I was like, seriously, like that's pretty bad. Actually, I better go look into that. But lots of studies have been done on this, and yeah, CBC provides like 5 to 7% of Canadian TV, film, and TV funding, and there is going to be some layoffs, but the bulk of the money comes from the Canadian Media Fund, provincial programs like Telefilm and SODEC, and private networks and the global streaming platforms. They provide a significant amount of funding for Canadian movies and TV. So of course, there will be problems in the film and television industry, but it's not like something that's existential, a threat to Canadian culture and Canadian film and TV like people are trying to make it out to sound. It'll suck. And I don't even think Pierre's going to completely defund the CBC and get rid of the CBC like Jasmine was saying. It's more like letting them run on their own 2 feet now and fixing this crazy left-wing bias that's really destroying the ability to have informed conversation.
Well, and he's been clear as well that Radio Canada is staying. So that is a part of the CBC that they will continue to fund in the French language, right? So of course, yes, it's not absolutely everything, but also I don't know, can we just think about that for a second? Like the fact that you have Canadian creators who are actively being censored and stifled and stomped on and insulted by the CBC when it's pretty crazy. I have yet to have any defamation lawsuits come to my door for saying anything that's not true, even though I'm misinformation. But the fact that we literally have a government funded media that is paid so much of taxpayer dollars. That is absurd, actually, when our hospitals are hurting, when our people are hurting, when we have such a bad crisis in so many.
The culture too amongst the creators, because you'll find I would assume that you could probably get a grant fairly easy to cover the story of Gary transitioning to Jeanette. like using public funds versus like you think you're going to get a grant covering the trucker, like doing a doc on the truckers in Ottawa?
No, people
Or,
got
like,
fired for
going
that.
going into the vaccine, or like into any of that, or talking about election
Bitcoin
interference, or talking about Bitcoin. Exactly.
They constantly run misinformation stories on Bitcoin. They associate Bitcoin with right-wing extremism, and they amplify Carney's central banker language of Bitcoin is a destabilizing force to the economy and it must be highly regulated. Like basically he was the one that wrote the op-ed that was published widely in the mainstream Canadian news that suggested freezing bank accounts of the truckers. So you're totally right, Kyle. Like it totally impacts.
Even my brother, like, he was like, I like the blockchain, but I'm not so certain about the Bitcoin. It's yeah, I gave him a piece of crypto art. See, I have these art. This is kind of fun. See this? This is a piece of crypto art from way back in the day. So Jasmine, the way this works is it's got a little QR code there. That's the address. This piece of art is a wallet. So this is the address. If you scan that, you can send basically, in effect, you can send Bitcoin into this painting. And if you want to spend the money, you have to take this off. And underneath, there's a seal to it. And that's got the private key. So Bitcoin has two things. It has the public key, which is like the email address. And then you have the private key, which is like the password that lets you move it. So anyways, I gave him one of these back in the day as like a little Christmas present or some Christmas birthday present. So I think it was probably just, just maybe a Bitcoin or a little bit less than a Bitcoin, but definitely best performing asset he ever had, other than that contract that he made to, join in whatever that deal was that he took.
Hey, Jasmine, you're muted.
I noticed that. It was good though, because it finished up and we were good.
And I do want to come back towards this like, there's a dichotomy here of two parties. And I also want to, before this next one, just give love to all the PPC supporters and to all the people that really believe in that party and are ardent about it. One of the things that concerns me about that is all this really strong, passionate, amazing energy got sucked into this other one with a hope and a dream. But unfortunately, having just worked in Bobby Kennedy on the third party, Canada is a two-party system, and the margin could be pretty slim. And I think I looked at the last election, and the PPC, it basically cost about 20 seats across the country. And I have a great amount of respect for Max, but Ben, Max also, dude, he's pissed off because he got fucked by the party back in 2017. And now he's still that energy and that anger is still going over. But one of the real costs of that whole thing was all the good, strong, intelligent discussion and voices are no longer in the room. And people are like, well, they're not even thinking about any of this stuff. It's because you're not in the room. If you're not in the room, if he's not hearing it, if it's not being talked about, if the members aren't actively discussing it, is not going to come about. So I will say, Pierre came to a conference that I hosted in 2017. Bobby, Sonny, you were there. I'm not sure, Brad, if you were there or not. There was the Canadian Government Blockchain Forum in Ottawa. It was just, we had a bunch of a facilitated talk about how this technology can be applied in government to create more fair, accountable, transparent, responsible government systems. And Pierre Poilievre randomly shows up on a request from one of our hosts. And he gave a off the cuff talk where he talked about Switzerland and referendums and how blockchain could be used. And he talked about direct democracy in Switzerland, how if the people have a problem, they get enough signatures and the whole country votes on it. And he said, wouldn't that be nice for Canada? And this is the technology behind Bitcoin that can enable this in a fair, transparent, open manner. Because this is really, really important for Canada, because we are governed by parties. They are our servants. They are supposed to be our representatives. They don't fucking represent us. They didn't represent you. They represent some geographical area. They don't represent you whatsoever. They represent their parties. And there's so many issues that they'll never even touch, that the vast majority of Canadians would be all in on if they had the opportunity to voice their opinion on it. Like, give examples, but Pierre actually talked about that. So he's thinking about those. He's aware of those. He likes Bitcoin. He understands Bitcoin. Is he a pro at Bitcoin? No, he's not a pro at Bitcoin, but he understands it. Versus Mark Carney. Mark Carney is the central banker. And if you've never watched the movie Zeitgeist, watch the movie Zeitgeist to understand who the men behind the curtains are. And Mark Carney is a man behind the curtain. I would not say that he's an ultimate leader, but he's one of the men behind the curtain, and he's one of their front men. And he, like I said earlier, isn't listening to the people. He doesn't care about the people whatsoever. He'll pretend, and the propaganda will make it look like he is. We're Canada strong, elbows up, all that kind of stuff. But he represents the central banks. The central banks like control, and he would push the whole carbon credit scam, and this net zero nonsense, and this reducing of energy, ultimately pushing Canadians down, has been part of the punching down on Canada that's been taking place. Because when you punch down on Canada, you get a very stratified society of an incredibly strong, like super elite, Laurentian elite, if you will, as a class, and then you have a bunch of poor people who are just basically trying to starve, and then they're also fighting each other all the time too in narrow wars. And it's easy, like if you're a ruler, you want the people fighting against each other because they're not coming after you. Whereas this is where they're at. And then we saw with the truckers, where they enacted the Emergencies Act and they froze people's bank accounts. And there are more and more they're going. And we just heard a story of a PPC member having her bank account frozen. Was it directly because of PPC member? Was something else? Maybe it might have been something else. But still, the ability for the government to go in and freeze people's bank accounts is like incredibly dangerous. This is the ultimate censorship. And that is why this is an emergency broadcast. And that is why this is this emergency. Mark Carney is the CBDC. This is Mark CBDC Carney, Mark Crisis Carney. He will use the crisis to bring about this, whether it's the trade war, whether it's the truckers, whether it's Trump, whatever it is. This guy has declared he's no good in times of prosperity. He's good in crisis. It's Crisis Carney. It's all going to be crisis. If we elect him, it's not stop crisis. This guy's a crisis actor, like pure and simple. And the CBDC is what he is trying to bring about. And if you don't know what CBDCs are, they're the central bank digital currency. This is a way right now, the central bank, you don't interact with the central bank. Technically they maybe print the bills, but you don't actually interact with them. You deal with Bank of Montreal, TD, ATP, your credit unions. With a CBDC, you'll literally have a wallet given to you, access permitted to you to use it directly from the central bank. So they're going to bypass them. And then there's the ability to censor, to control, to pull back, to freeze, to reward compliance, to punish disobedience. It can be used so nefariously in so many ways. It is the biggest threat. And they're always looking for this. Chinese already do this. They use their app WeChat, the everything app that they have over there. It looks like something's coming over there. We must stand firm and resolve against this. And this is one thing where I think if people know that your money, if your bad habits, which everybody's got some bad habits or bad thoughts or has done something bad, if you can selectively be shut down and targeted by the government or by a regime, beware. This is a very slippery slope. And Pierre has said, I will stand up for that and say against it. And I do know that he will not be the fast track that Mark Carney certainly will be. So that is my just huge warnings. CBDCs, Mark CBDC, Mark Crisis Carney is a major threat, and Pierre is against it. So just right on that alone, it's time for change, folks.
Kyle, what's funny too is if you've been paying it, I know you guys have all been paying attention, but for everyone else in the audience, the funny thing is Carney's obviously very much aligned with a lot of the European Union kind of established elite. and they're very much aligned on this tip. Like they're very like anti-Bitcoin, pro CBDC, pro centralized currencies. Like
I wonder why.
yeah, no, and also, you know, if you guys remember, like what was it, like 40, 50 days ago, or whatever, when he was like elected as a new liberal leader, his first trip was to the UK and to the EU to talk shop in the middle of a fucking trade war with the US, right? Like his first stop was, we're gonna go over there, you know, and we're gonna go kiss the ring, because like that's where the allegiance is. And you know, to Kyle's point, it's like, yeah, you gotta like thread the needle between all these things, right? Like, no, Pierre's clearly said, he's like, we don't want any of this shit, right? Like Trump said, we don't want any of this shit, right? And then you look at the other side, and they're like, yeah, they're not necessarily like, they're not talking openly about it, but they're also like not denouncing it. So it's kind of like you got to read between the lines, and it's not good. And also the Bank of Canada. I remember, so back in the day, I used to work at a think tank called the Blockchain Research Institute. We did a bunch of work with the Bank of Canada and some, kind of affiliate organizations. They used to run all sorts of pilots on the stuff, right? When Carney was there, and it's just like they've had their fingerprints all over this, and not to be all doom and gloom. And obviously, it's hard to tell which direction it's going to go in, but I wouldn't discount the fact that like they're very much interested in experimenting with this stuff, and it's not great.
I just realized something as we're talking here. I think Carney gave Pierre a gift with his crisis acting and his emergency tariff war, because like, honestly, I'm thinking this through, that I was worried that when Pierre won, he was going to have to contend with the fallout from the crisis that was created under Trudeau, and that he would be blamed for it. But Trump and Carney making such a big deal out of the tariffs as if it's an emergency, national emergency, when it's just Trump bloviating and trying to onshore some manufacturing and do his art of the deal shtick thing, and joking or just trolling or whatever. But whatever it is, like, we had a situation in Canada where during the last 3 years, the Federal Reserve started tightening. So they started letting their debt roll off, the M2 money supply, the base money. It started to shrink, actually. And usually what happens is the government runs deficits and the banks print money from loan demand. So money is not lent out like people think. In the banking system, people think you deposit money and the bank lends it out to somebody else. And then there's this money multiplier effect where you deposit $1,000 and then the $900 gets created as a loan and gets sent to somebody else. They deposit it. Now $800 can get loaned out, and there's this money multiplier. That's actually like a fiction. It's like not how it works anymore. It's actually fictional reserve banking. It's not fractional reserve banking. Banks literally have a money by licensed by the central bank to print money. So as long as there's demand by the consumers and businesses to borrow money, the banks can print the money. There is no reserve requirements. In Canada, since the 90s, we've been on zero reserve requirements. In the States, they did it. They dropped reserve requirements in COVID for emergency stimulus. So that's what causes inflation. Inflation is the government doing deficit spending, the central bank monetizing the deficit spending through quantitative easing, which is basically just printing money to buy bonds that nobody can buy because there's not enough money to buy the bonds, and banks creating money from nothing. I think I may have already said that one, but it's basically, there's like the banks, the government, and the central bank. They're the source of new money. And the inflation problem that came from the COVID stimulus, Mark Carney and his central banker ilk, Tiff Macklem, it's the central bank in Canada. They were afraid of deflation. They were actually saying, we're afraid prices are going to fall, so we want inflation. Chrystia Freeland was saying the same thing. Pierre Poilievre was actually out there publicly on record during COVID times saying, okay, so what are you going to do when the interest rate drives up? Because when the government's out there competing for money in the free market, it drives the cost of money up, the interest rate. So he was sparring with Tiff Macklem during House of Commons virtual meetings, and he ended up proving right. So anyways, there's this major problem where Trudeau and Carney, as the financial advisor to Trudeau, printed massive amounts of money through quantitative easing and CERB stimulus. So the government did the CERB and the central bank created the money to buy the bonds that the government was issuing. And so monetizing the debt, and all of that together creates inflation. Like, that's really what creates inflation. The increased amount of money in circulation. So that's a base understanding of what was happening at that time. But the big problem that I always saw for the last couple of years with Pierre was, well, he's going to inherit all these problems and the media is just going to blame him for it. They're not going to understand that Trudeau steered us into the Titanic into the iceberg and just kept grinding at the iceberg. And, you know, Pierre got the iceberg a couple degrees back into away from the iceberg, but still there's going to be some decks lost. And they were just going to start blaming him because nobody understands these things in the mainstream news. And they just listen to what the economists and central bankers say. And they say, oh no, it's capitalism that causes inflation. It's greedy grocery stores. So he was going to have to contend with the economic fallout from all this money printing. And so what the central bankers decided to do was, after they created inflation, they started to try to pull the lever in the opposite direction to crush people and to crush markets and create falling prices in stocks, to crush inflation by stopping the money printing, by not doing any quantitative easing, by reversing course and doing quantitative tightening. So all of this to say is, like, that's what the Federal Reserve did. And the United States is the behemoth in the world. That's what we have to pay attention to. Like, whatever happens in the United States is going to affect us big time. And when the Federal Reserve stopped printing money, they stopped doing the problem to create inflation, they actually got inflation under control. Because when you decrease the amount of money and you stop printing new money, the inflation comes down. Imagine that. But what did we do in Canada? We printed into it. We actually increased our spending. And what that does, that's an opening volley in a trade war with the Americans. Because when our dollar becomes less valuable, it increases investment from American companies that say, I can get more bang for my buck by investing in Canada. So when they printed into the deflationary effect that was going on in the United States, in Canada, we increased our spending. It devalued the Canadian dollar in that COVID time by 25%. Our GDP grew from American investment by the same amount. Basically, it was like a tariff. When we perform an act of currency war against the Americans by purposefully devaluing our dollar, we're doing a tariff. Basically, we're attracting American money in. And and Pierre's policies are all about stronger paychecks, so you can work and earn a living wage to bring the cost of living down. Ultimately, that means a stronger Canadian dollar. And what's going to happen is that thing that I just described about what the Liberals did to devalue our dollar against the American dollar, which attracted American investment, Pierre's policies are going to be better for Canadians, but it's going to mean a stronger dollar. He's going to unleash the energy industry. So the Canadian dollar is going to be stronger. What's that going to do? That's going to actually be a deterrent for all the Americans to come invest in Canada because they don't get as much bang for their buck anymore. So this actually is like 4D chess. and now I get why Pierre has been saying stay the course, and he's been drumming this, hammering on this drum, because Mark Carney's out there making it sound like it's all Trump's fault. And when Pierre takes over, when he wins and he actually is able to strengthen the Canadian dollar, and we do lose American investment, he's not going to have to deal with the CBC and all these left-wing people saying, oh, it's Pierre's fault for causing Americans to stop investing in Canada, because they've already done it to themselves through tariffs. The Americans are onshoring their own investments. And it's actually like just giving me a lot of hope right now, just realizing this, that Carney's doing Pierre's job for him. And the Trump has given this smoke screen for being able to not have to deal with all this left-wing nonsense that's going to come when the Canadian dollar strengthens and Americans stop investing as much in Canada.
Brad, one thing, so I'm happy you brought this up, because I actually think this is a relevant point, which is that, the lack of US dollar investments in Canada, like it's been on like a precipitous decline for the last 10 years, right? So it's already on a downtrend, right? There's no sign of reversal. Like the amount of US dollars that have left, or US dollar investment that's left Canada, I forget the actual stats, but it's like in the hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Like it's a very, very large number. And like, yeah, like, okay, fine, maybe it's not going to encourage people to invest in Canada, but like we're already in a shitty situation, right? So you kind of like, you might as well just run with it, to your point. But I don't think there's no way of kind of like navigating around that, right? Like that's just what it is, right? Like, and we're gonna have to stay the course if it works out that way.
Now there's no need to, because the Americans did tariffs and it's an emergency and blah blah blah, so he doesn't have to actually deal with that problem anymore, it seems.
That is so interesting. But I also wonder too, I mean, like if he's going to on top of that also be lowering taxes to encourage investment, I'm very curious to see how that would look long term, and how big of a drop or a gain or whatever it would actually be, because obviously we can speculate for now. But Brad, I have to say, you just took my brain on a trip that I hadn't taken yet, so thank you for that, because that was very enlightening.
Well, thank you. But the other thing about that topic is, I feel like, as a Bitcoiner and as Bitcoiners listening to this, one of the things that Pierre has said, which is very hopeful for me, and this is kind of, I think, a little subtle nod to Bitcoiners, even though he can't publicly say things like this, but he's putting forward like a good start policy towards being able to reinvest in Canada. And as Bitcoiners, some of us that have been in Bitcoin a long time, we've seen massive unrealized capital gains on our Bitcoin. And, like I got into Bitcoin in 2011. I was mining it in my basement. I was an entrepreneur in the gaming industry, like making social games. But then I got caught by the Bitcoin bug, and my wife thought I was nuts. I was like buying all these graphics cards and mining in my basement. But I was mining Bitcoin at $10 a coin. And so I've seen like 400,000, 500,000% gains on some of those early Bitcoin that over time I've made stupid mistakes and I've sold and, done things like that. But there's a saying in Bitcoin, like never sell your Bitcoin, because it's the best money that you can save in. It's a savings technology. So I'm saving this for my kids, my generations to come type of mentality. Right. But Pierre's announced this sort of like capital gains exemption if you reinvest in Canada. So somebody like me who wants to sell some Bitcoin and invest in a Canadian business, I'm going to have this massive tax hit whenever I want to do that. So I just want to hold longer so that I can, a lot of us believe Bitcoin's going to $10 million a coin by, 2040, where the Privy Council thinks that everybody's going to be eating cats under bridges. I kind of have a more hopeful view on Canada because of Bitcoin. I feel like there's going to be a lot of wealth unlocked because of Bitcoin, because as the world adopts Bitcoin as a new global reserve asset that will be up there with US bonds, as the US bonds and the dollar decline in relevance, not go away, but declines. Bitcoin, gold, those things come up in relevance for reserve asset status. Bitcoin's going to be worth a lot of money. It's going to be $10 million a coin, whatever it's going to be. If Pierre has this policy where I can sell one Bitcoin for, if it's $1 million a Bitcoin, I can sell one Bitcoin and I don't have to pay capital gains tax if I reinvest that in a Canadian business, I'm going to do that. I'm going to, there's always going to be a large percentage of my net worth that I'm going to keep in Bitcoin, because I do believe it's the best thing to own. But I also want to support independent media, and like a Canadian company like yours that's like putting out real information. People like me would invest in that. But right now, if I want to invest in that, I'm going to have to pay like 25% capital gains tax.
Dumb.
And I can't even donate my Bitcoin without paying capital gains tax on it. Like I can't even donate you one Bitcoin, without me having to find the 30% capital gains tax money to pay the tax on it. So
you don't have to donate me anything. Your intelligence is doing more than enough for me right now. Don't worry.
Or like Pierre actually donated back in 2022. Dan Albus, he's a MP in BC. he put forward a bill that would fix that problem. It would allow Canadians to be able to donate Bitcoin the same way that they can donate stocks and not have to pay cap gains taxes. Pierre donated $100 worth of Bitcoin to the local SPCA that in Dan's riding and said that when he's prime minister, he's going to support this bill. So it's just common sense stuff, right? Like, unlock the wealth that's been built through people that are, Canadian Bitcoiners that have contributed a lot and kind of done the work and grown their wealth, and they want to help, they want to invest, but we're being punished right now in two ways. In one way, selling Bitcoin's a dumb idea, and in the second way, like, it's even worse of an idea if you're if you're all in Bitcoin, you choose not to live fiat life, then where are you going to, you got to first find the money to pay the cap gains tax, and then you're going to invest your money. So I think Pierre's idea around getting rid of cap gains taxes if you reinvest in a Canadian business, that's going to concentrate like onshoring of a lot of money, and it'll make up for the American investment that I think it'll make up, at least for the Americans that aren't going to be investing in the Canadian economy because it's a stronger Canadian dollar.
And this right here is an example of how two different, how they're two very extremely different choices in this election, because it's my belief that the Carney Liberals and the power structures behind them, who they really are following orders from, do not want a strong entrepreneurial, innovative, disruptive class within Canada. Does not want Canadians investing in Canada. Mark Carney wants the government to be deciding, we're going to build the 500,000. We'll build the roads. We'll build the buildings. We control this. Versus, Pierre is like, I really believe he's like, let's just step out of the way here, because Canada's incredible. We have so much talent, and we live in an age right now where we have access to more information, to more technology, to better tools than we've ever had before. We can do incredible things. That's the choice that we've got here.
I will say, damn it. Can we rock, paper, scissors again?
Okay.
Whoa.
Ready? One, two.
Best out of 2, 3? Best out of 3? Best out of 1? Okay, sorry. You're right. It's too long. Sorry. Okay.
Ready?
1, 2, 3. Wait, that's how you do it? Oh, you're one of those people. Okay, sorry. Take 2.
Genia.
Okay, one more time. I'll do it your way.
1, 2, 3, go.
Okay.
1,
2, 3. Go.
Oh.
You are a loser.
Okay, you go.
All right.
You go.
With
I won. Everybody saw that, right? Kind of, technically. That's fine. I'm the token woman in this panel. I deserve to talk right now, I guess. It's really interesting to kind of hear you guys break this all down. And also, I do have to jump off after I'm done saying this, but thank you all deeply for teaching me a lot. I love that. But it's really interesting just to, when you actually get to break down the biggest differences, and those differences are control, or you get to live your life, really. And I will say, from being with Poilievre on Monday, doing that interview and stuff, obviously we had off the record chats before and afterwards as well. And that was certainly a vibe that I really got, where it wasn't about the control at all. And you see that a lot with people who are in politics, Mark Carney, obviously, where it is about control. It's about power and the ego and all those things that come with it. And certainly, and he reiterates it plenty of times during our conversation as well. But it really was just so much more about, like, I've been advocating for these same things for so long, and I don't need to have the power and control. I don't need any of that, because we're all going to be living such a better life if we actually do something and make a difference here. And so I think it's been really interesting to kind of hear you guys break this down, and, like crypto, Bitcoin, that kind of stuff. I don't know anything about anything when it comes to the digital currency, and honestly, even most things on the internet. So it's been really insightful to hear that, and also have that kind of just be another, it just really reiterates the same thoughts that I've had about Mark Carney, who I quite literally think is evil. And I mean that. in terms of why he's doing this and what his plans are for us as well. But anyway, those are just my weird little closing remarks, and I do have to leave now. But thank you guys very much for having me on and for teaching me things. This was fun. We should do it again one day.
Thanks for joining.
Jasmine, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah,
and, you know, thank you to
congrats too
everybody.
on all your success. I just
Thank
want to
you.
say thank you for all your independent, work you're doing out there and sticking with it. And, there's a lot of haters out there, but like, I think you have like at least 10 times as many fans as haters because you're doing awesome. So thank you so much for putting in that hard work.
Stop it. Stop being so nice. I can't handle that. Thank you so much. It's so funny. I like quite literally, I'm just like, I'm just a person, and I love people. I love my country. And, I like being able to say what I think, and it's the greatest honor of my life, knowing that there's other people who have similar views and whatnot too. So it truly is such an honor and blessing. And thank you very, very much, all of you.
Keep rocking it.
Okay, well, talk soon. Hey, Kyle, tell Uncle Mark I said hi.
Hold on. This Uncle Mark, well, I've got a picture of him.
Oh, no.
Here we go.
This guy?
Oh no.
Oh.
God.
Anyways, and Pierre, I feel like we need a better name for Pierre. Like we got it's just the branding. It's like the PP, like
It's so juvenile.
Okay.
I heard it.
I am
from my
leaving.
mother.
Goodbye,
Okay,
everyone.
Jasmine,
Bye.
thank you. This was real. We'll do it again.
I just want to hit on one quick point, which I touched on in that like long blog post I wrote. But I think like one of the interesting kind of juxtapositions between Pierre and Carney is like Pierre, he's talking about like the industrialization and privatization of Canada, and Carney's talking about the nationalization. Like this is like the fork in the road, right? Like it can't be any more obvious based on the plans that they've laid out. And frankly, there's nothing in what Mark Carney laid out in his plan that incentivizes entrepreneurship, more investment in the country, or anything in that direction. Like directionally, that is like non-existent. And that's a fucking problem, right? If we like go back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of, the level of, government employment in the country, like whether it's 25% or 20% or 18%, it's a large number.
Okay.
And
I fact checked that. You're right.
Yeah.
It's 23% of all employed individuals in Canada are publicly funded employees. You're right on that. I couldn't believe it.
I know, dude.
Nuts.
Trust
and
me.
if they all vote, that represents
It's
nearly
insane.
50% of all voters.
So like this is the problem, right? And like listen, I know there's like, look, I've grown up even though I don't live in Canada full time anymore. Like I grew up in Canada for like 90% of my life, and there's obviously a lot of like socialist type leanings in a lot of the culture, right? And it's very like aggressively perpetuated, right, through all these different arms. And I think there's a lot of like good intentions behind it, because like we want to have a social safety net and we want people to be taken care of and like all this like feel good shit. But the reality is like you cannot have the government have a hand in fucking everything, or be the nanny state, or employ a quarter or a fifth of the people. Like that's insane, right? Like you're creating the wrong incentives, and then you're also disincentivizing any like private innovation or anything in that direction. So I think, to me personally, like outside of like all the other things we talked about, like this is important, because if we do not increase the level of entrepreneurship and we do not incentivize people to build things, and we used to be a nation of builders, if this doesn't happen, it's not going to be great, and it's going to get perpetually worse. And so that's one of the things I'm concerned about.
Well, you can see that in the data too, because one of the results of this trend of the decline of self-employed and the massive increase in publicly funded jobs in Canada, is looking at our productivity levels. We are between, some people estimate at 70%, some estimate at 80%, but we're at 75, say, percent productivity levels of Americans when you normalize for GDP and per capita. So that is because we put all the money in inefficient government jobs and bureaucracies and red tape, and we don't support the private sector and the entrepreneurship nearly as much as we should. And even our policies during COVID shut everybody's business down and put them in debt $60,000. I mean, like, how is that going to help our productivity? What was that one that came up on screen? I missed that.
That was someone sent $30 to Jasmine to post your X handle.
That's my buddy Anton. Thanks, Anton. He's my partner.
We got lots
actually.
of like, just shout out to all the people in the comments. It's been an incredibly active feed. Sonny, you've been watching?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. A lot of XRP people, like,
Yeah.
of course, like,
Stop. God bless them.
Is there actually?
Oh yeah.
Because it's funny because I was looking at the survey that ShakePay did yesterday, the day before, and there's almost 4 million people in Canada that hold Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So it depends on how you look at it, but like Pierre, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist and I don't like XRP, but Pierre is a freedom of choice guy, and he's about you making your own decisions, whether it's with your body, with abortion or your vaccines. He's about you making your own choices. And I asked him this question when he came to the Tahinis. I got to like walk out to the car with him and his policy or his campaign guy, Matt. And I was like, okay, a lot of these PPC guys really want you to say your what you think about vaccines, because they're hung up on that and they don't want to support you unless you're able to tell them you're against vaccine mandates. And so he was like, I can't say that. It's a political football that like is not smart for me to say those things right now. I can't come out and say you should choose Bitcoin over altcoins. But he basically was saying, like, the thing that I'm doing is trying to make it so that the government is not in the way of your choices. And whether you want to choose to get the vaccine or not, it's your choice. And it's the same with Bitcoin. So for him, he chooses Bitcoin. He publicly disclosed just the other day that he holds the Bitcoin ETF and the Bitcoin in self-custody, like, $5,000 worth of Bitcoin in self-custody. He doesn't have any altcoins. And it's funny because I brought him, when I went to take a picture with him, I brought him this book. It's called Reasons to Buy Altcoins. And when I went to give it to him, he went like this. He went, no, thanks. And then I showed it to him.
It was empty.
I showed it to him, it was empty. And then he's like, okay. But like, basically, like, you can choose whatever you want. It's the same sort of thing. When I went to the Indu committee to kind of like speak about Bitcoin, there's a whole bunch of paid lobbyists from shitcoin companies and NFT companies and whatever. They were all there to try to say, you should treat Bitcoin and our centralized cryptocurrency the same. But, whatever. They're going to try to lobby. They're going to try to do what they do. The main thing that I was there to do and what Bitcoiners are trying to do and what we're trying to do at the Bitcoin Coalition of Canada, which is a registered nonprofit that we're trying to educate policymakers and Canadians generally and journalists about, is like Bitcoin mining. We should be allowing the like renewable energy increase usage to mine Bitcoin. Bitcoin mining provides a lot of jobs. It helps green the grid. It helps stabilize the grid. And Bitcoin self-custody, like we need to protect Bitcoin self-custody. We want to be able to get, be able to put Bitcoin in our tax-free savings accounts and RSPs, Bitcoin businesses, and even crypto businesses. We should be able to have bank accounts. Like, we got to end this sort of banking cartel blockade against Bitcoin and crypto businesses. So even though personally I'm not a fan of crypto, all the XRP people, all the Dogecoin people, all the Ethereum people, you got a choice here. Like Mark Carney is 100% wanting to control what you do, and him and Freeland and the liberals were instrumental in adding the FATF travel rule enforcement and getting all the crypto exchanges to start having to do this FinCEN stuff where you got to like record your ID when you're sending crypto from an exchange to an exchange. So they want to expand on that. Like Mark Carney has publicly said 3 times or 5 times I've seen where he's talked about Bitcoin and crypto. And he says one time it was Bitcoin is a failed currency. That was in 2018 when it was like $400-$500. So, or not, so $4,000 or $5,000. So obviously he's wrong there, a failed currency. He said it's a criminal act of monetary amnesia. So he said Bitcoin is a poor store of value. This was like 3 years ago when we were in the depths of the bear market. And then when we came out of the bear market, somebody asked him about what do you think of Bitcoin? And he just goes, who cares? And then in his book Values, he said Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies poses threats to the financial stability and needs strict regulation. So for all the XRP guys out there, while I don't condone you sticking that vaccine in yourself, the crypto vaccine, you do what you want, but you should vote for Pierre Poilievre because he's going to defend your freedom of choice to make poor financial decisions.
Yeah.
Someone just mentioned like the poly market too. I tried to make a bet on poly market the other day, but I'm an American. I can't do it. But right now, like it is, dude, the poly markets have it at 80%. What do you say?
Hey, can I chime in here as someone who has a shitload riding on Pierre? So I've been buying Pierre's on Poly Market since like 20%, between 20 and 23%, and like obviously like the odds here that are represented are, you know, not great. So the one thing I will say, and obviously, you know, if you just back end some math here, you know, it becomes very obvious. Like these, like, yes, Poly Market is a good representation of like where people want to place their bets and like where they're putting, you know, their money where their mouth is.
Market.
Yeah, but so 2 caveats. One, this is not representative of the actual sentiment. This is representative of people in jurisdictions that can place bets on these things. 1, 2. The other thing is like it doesn't take a lot to actually skew these odds. And so if you put in a high 6-figure or low 7-figure bid in either direction, you could skew the odds pretty dramatically. So
yeah, like if you put 1,000, you get 5,300. If you put 10,000, but then you put 100, okay, now we're at 4.
But look, Kyle, look at how so you put in $1 million, right? Okay, so actually this is a great exercise. So if you put in $1 million, right? So you will jack up Pierre's odds to 61 cents. So you will jack it up by like roughly 40 and change cents right now. If you put $1 million. So
I think I figured out what is going on here.
Well, hold on, Brad, let me finish. Hold on real quick. 30 seconds. So what I'm trying to say here, and this is like a great illustration, it doesn't take a lot of money if you have money to blow on optics, aka this is like you're using it as a marketing expense, and not to like get all tinfoil hat, but if you want to, let's say you have some 2nd or 3rd degree away from you people that want to create the perception that you're in the lead, all you have to do is put $1 or $2 or $3 million into this, and suddenly you have a 50-60 point lead. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but I'm saying that that's a real possibility based on the numbers we could see on the screen. So if you
I've seen, like that's the kind of common thing that everybody's been saying. I've been hearing that for weeks, and even I thought that. But then I thought about it differently the other day, and I think I realized what's really going on here. Because I was like, I saw these, and I started actually going out door knocking after I saw this, because I was like, I got to go see what people are saying at the doors, because these polls don't make sense to me. The Poly Market doesn't make sense to me. I want to go see what people are saying at the doors. So I went out door knocking, and I told this to Sonny earlier. I actually, over the last 3 weeks, I've gone out door knocking with both the Liberals and the Conservatives, because I wanted to hear what people were saying at the doors when I was representing with a Conservative, and when I was with a Liberal. What are people going to say? Because maybe somebody that wants to vote Liberal when there's a Conservative at the door is going to say, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to vote." But I'll tell you, what I saw was not representative to the poly market or to the polls at all. And what I'm hearing from my connections out east, where it's a Liberal stronghold, exact same thing. It's like 30% of people to 40% of people are just completely checked out of the election. They have no idea. They don't want to vote. They don't want to participate. The other people, they are 60% supportive of Conservative enthusiastically. And the other 30 to 40% are split between Liberal and NDP or whatever, and PPC. But basically, like, it's like 60 to 70%, I believe, is the true number of people that when you ask them like at the door. And it was the same with the Liberal. So what I thought was like, okay, so obviously there's this idea that you can fund the perception and demoralize the support because of what happened with the Trump election. You get ahead of that. You use this, whatever resources you got overseas to get them. China can start, they're already manipulating the election.
Central bankers are behind this. They have unlimited money in theory.
But here's what I thought differently. Okay, this is actually a really sophisticated, and maybe my math is not right, or I'm thinking about it wrong, but I think this is actually a really sophisticated way for some trader group to make a shitload of money, because of the reason you just said, that you could manipulate this down. You can demoralize it. You can create a momentum trend of downward, and it's supported by these polls.
Yep.
It doesn't take much to drop the poll, to drop the odds, because Canadians can't use poly market. Areas can't use poly market. So people who are actually more in the know can't voice their opinion properly and purchase the right opinion because you can't register. That's and right. I even talked to Lynn Alden about the election recently, and I was like, are you paying attention to this? She had no idea. She's like, oh, well, I saw the polls are showing that the Liberal person is going to win. And I was like, are you following it at all? Are you seeing the poly market? She's like, I'm not really paying attention to it. So Americans aren't paying attention to it, and they just think the polls are right and that it looks like Pierre's not going to win. And the Canadians that are paying attention can't bet. So it's some
Canadians can't bet.
Well, hang on. So
Ontario people can't register.
Well, okay. Let's be honest about the fact that you could just plug in a VPN and like it's all gravy.
Yeah, but like it's even hard, dude. Like I tried. You can't. It's like they do advanced. Really? It's like some of the crypto airdrop things where they'll actually use sophisticated ways to block Americans from getting their airdrops on these DeFi airdrops. Like they're doing that on Polymarket, blocking Canadians. So anyways, the thing that I think is plus what I'm predicting is that we're going to see very close to the election, like probably to like Sunday or something like that, a green candle, like an Omega green candle on Polyev. And it's going to be all manipulated to try to demoralize and get the thing down. So the odds are so good to bet on Polyev that the same people that drove it down are going to make profit on the God candle.
So, so here. Okay. I'm happy you brought that up because I've considered this, and
they're going to flip.
In my mind, there's one of two things is going on. One, the perception is being artificially suppressed by someone that's liberal aligned to create the optics of like, oh my God, there's this runaway lead, blah, blah, blah. Or Brad, what you're saying, option two, which is like you create that perception, but then you're able to buy in at the 5-to-1 odds.
You want it to just make money. You get as low as possible, and then you flip and you put millions on Polyev, and there's a God candle. There's an Omega candle for Polyev.
That's right. Even like looking at it right now, like you can't. There's only so much volume that you can put into this. Like right now, at 100,000, like you're making 425. But as soon as you go to 1 million, it's like
you change the odds dramatically. Look at that.
Dramatically.
You change the odds from like 18 cents to 63 cents. You change the odds by like a factor of 60%.
Like if you put 2 million, it's like you're winning. You're leaving with 2,600.
What happens if you put 5 in?
Oh, it goes straight to 100
What?
probably.
So $5.
No,
5
5
million.
million. Yeah, go straight to if no
50
5
million.
million. 88 cents. 5
Put
million
50.
88 cents. There you go.
Put 50. It went to 70 when you did 50.
Yeah. Well, 50 turns
50
into
million.
50 million. It
Yeah.
turns into
All right.
7. So you're losing
7
money.
million. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there's a sweet spot there somewhere.
Kyle, if you go to 7 million, I guarantee it'll go to like 95 or something like that, or it'll go into the 90s. Put in 7 million. Let's see where it goes. Oh, it goes straight to 100. There you
So
go.
it's you're basically even.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
but
it.
you will manipulate that market hard right there.
Exactly.
So, okay. So my thought is not really that valid because it wouldn't be worth it for them to spend the money on the Carney shares to drive the market down only to then make $500,000.
No, but if they spent it early on, it would have been cheaper, right? Like now it's like a little bit more expensive.
I guess, yeah, if they spent it, created the momentum,
Exactly.
and then, yeah.
It
We'll see. But
But on the small bets, you can take advantage of this. And then ultimately, when that candle happens, and when those big buys happen, like you can then sell your position at a profit too before before the election has taken place, and the payouts go out.
Okay, boys, let's I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to end off on like what we think predictions are for Monday, because to be honest, like I'm still cautiously optimistic. I don't know what to make of all this shit. It's still obviously kind of changing in real time. I'm getting kind of positive and negative signals from from both sides, but just curious, like where do we think we land on Monday?
I think Pierre's going to win, like majority government. I don't see how it can't happen.
Okay, fucking A.
I concur. This feels so much like Trump, like, and it's so equivalent. And we've just had 10 years of the liberal shit, and people like recognize the bias and the propaganda, and like they're just relentlessly pushing the same tired messaging. And yes, there is like an extreme fringe minority that is deep under that spell, and it might be a little bit bigger than that. But I think people will be going out, and it's like they're not necessarily talking, but like when push comes to shove at that booth, assuming the integrity of the elections, because the last election happened in the middle of the pandemic, so that was like America too, so it was it was a little bit more shady. This one shouldn't be. This one, like there should be a lot more oversight into it, in my opinion. I don't see like it's over. It's time.
Well, we have to do this. We have to convince people the risks of not participating, because a lot of Bitcoiners, like, Bitcoin is our politics, and we opted out of that. We vote with our fiat, and a lot of I engage with a lot of Bitcoiners on Twitter that are just like, they're all globalists, or they're all for fiat, and like, I'm not going to vote, like accelerationist, all this stuff. But like, seriously, what's the good of living in a country where you have free speech money that doesn't respect free speech and property rights? You need to go out there and vote for Pierre. Like, literally, don't vote PPC, don't protest and not vote. Like, this, if you want to stay in Canada and have your Bitcoin self-custody rights protected, you need to go bring 5 people to go vote with you. You need to like go out and get as many people as you possibly can convince to vote for the Conservative Party.
And if you're a liberal too, and you really don't feel comfortable, or you don't like Pierre, but you're also not comfortable about Crisis Carney or CBDC Carney, it's easy too. Just don't vote. Like, just don't. Like, that's also like another viable strategy. It's just don't, like, it's already in the bag, guys.
Look, I think one thing I'll say on this is like, and I outlined this in the piece that I wrote, is just like there's a very like simple way to look at how this election is being played out, and it comes down to this: there's been basically a decade of a type of policy that has been implemented across the country, across like every facet of our lives, and where we're at now is the result of that. So these things clearly didn't work, right? no matter which way you measure it, and like all the stats are, they're in the blog post, whatever, like it didn't work. Like it doesn't matter like what your party affiliation is. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. This is not an emotional argument. This is a very rational thing. It's like, did the thing that they tried to do have the result? And the answer is no. And it was really fucking bad. And here we are dealing with the repercussions. So put aside like your political affiliation and, oh, I can't vote conservative or any of this stupid shit, because those are all lenses. Like just put it aside and think about it rationally. Like, this didn't work. Why don't we give this other thing a chance? And this other thing actually has a plan, right? And you don't like forget about like, oh, Pierre. Oh, I don't like Pierre. I don't like this. I don't like that. Forget about him. You're voting for the party and the party policies, right? Give it a chance. It's just 4 years. If it doesn't work in 4 years, go back and vote Lib or NDP.
It might not even be 4 years, too.
Yeah,
Like,
it might even be less. Who gives a fuck? Maybe Pierre sucks. Maybe we're all wrong. Maybe not. And what's the risk? The risk is you're going to go and tank everything further down the road where we know the shit doesn't work. So it's like, put aside your ego, put aside your affiliations and your identity, just try something else out. That's it. It's a very rational position. And this isn't this isn't tribal. This isn't like, come and be a conservative and like believe all the things we believe. It's not about that. It's about, let's try something else. That's all. That's literally all I've been trying to say. It's all I've been trying to tell people and friends of mine that are on the other side. Like, it's not about affiliation. Like, let's just try new ideas. Put the people and the identity aside. Like, let's try new shit. That's it. That's all I'm trying to say.
Sonny, what do you think?
Oh my God. Just taking it in. I'll tell you,
Sonny.
I vote me. I'm so tired of this. Like, I don't care about these people. I mean, I'll play along Pierre, but where was Pierre when we needed him, man? When we were in Ottawa, when we were yelling, yeah, he finally came in, but too late. Why is he not talking about Bitcoin right now? In my view, I don't like it. Okay, he should be talking about Bitcoin. Why is Brad having to be the torch bearer? I want him talking about it. So the thing I said before, the thing I said before, yeah, and I've how do I say this without saying it?
Just say it.
Yeah. Anyway, so how do I say this? Anyways, look, I'm close to a lot of the people that got Trump orange pilled, right? And so Pierre is actively trying to distance himself from these types of people, which
you understand why, though, right, Sonny?
Yeah, sure. But I'm gonna say my piece. I'm just saying, hey, look, okay, Pierre. Yeah, if I had a choice of gun to my head between these two, for sure. But
Steelman.
But my antennas, my spidey senses are tingling a little bit. Like, meaning I'm not happy with either. And here's the thing. I was telling you this morning on our interview, Brad, is like, what's going on? Why is Trump like, hey, I want this Carney guy to win? There's 4D chess going on here, brother. There's something far greater than just the few pieces, the pawns that we're looking at. Canada, I love Canada. I'm Canadian. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, right? I love PP. Love PP, okay? I love it. But at the end of the day, Canada doesn't matter on a global scale. Bitcoin will march on. The fact that the United States has now leaped from being completely lost to now completely found in less than a year, bro, I got my popcorn out. I'm here for it. And I don't even like convincing people, okay? I don't like being convinced. Who are you to try and convince me? I'm not going to try to convince other people. I will tell people that I am a Bitcoiner through and through. This PP guy seems to be saying the right thing. He's very well spoken. He dresses well. He's a fellow Albertan. I like him, okay? So people, go vote for him. But what I'm trying to say is vote for Bitcoin, right? And here's the thing. If you vote for Bitcoin, I've been in Bitcoin for 13 years. In Bitcoin, you need a backup plan. You need a backup of a backup. You need a backup of a backup. So your mind kind of goes towards, well, what if shit hits the fan? And what if this corny guy does win? Hey, if he wins and you're Bitcoining, yes, life's going to be difficult. Yes, free speech, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, like you said, you jet. Worst case, you leave the country, right? So at the end of the day, look after yourself, hit the gym, work out, spend time with your family, with your kids, and vote PP.
Empty.
I don't know what to say.
But wait, Sonny, I want to go back.
Yeah,
Because
go back.
it's a really good exercise to be able to steel man a position. And I want to see if you can steel man the reasons why Pierre is not talking about the, Chris Barber and the vaccine mandates and the Freedom Convoy and Bitcoin and distancing himself from Trump, which are all concerns that a lot of Bitcoiners and a lot of people that are that shit was seriously aggravating for. That's what the whole PPC movement is pissed off about that stuff. A lot of Bitcoiners are kind of like, what the hell is he? Why isn't he talking about this stuff? Can you steel man it? Why he would not be doing that?
Oh, I totally get it. Because he's scared. He's scared of losing. That's my problem with it. That's my problem with it. Is he's telling people what they want to hear versus standing up based on principle. Oh, you mean you want to play the other side of it?
Yeah.
No.
Argue for that.
Of course. Oh, well.
Argue
for Pierre?
He's saying that he's afraid is not steel manning. That's like.
Well, isn't he afraid to lose? Isn't that his main reason?
No, I mean, I would say that he's concerned about the optics of that. Most normal people in Canada don't understand Bitcoin, and it opens up attack vectors.
I think he thinks that. Think he thinks that.
I'm not.
I don't know if that's true anymore.
And the people around him, and the party people around him as well.
Exactly, and that's my problem with it.
With
is what I'm trying to say is that come from a principal's perspective. Look, if you have a gun to your head and you got two guys, obviously Pierre's going to lead to a much better world, right? Obviously. But what I'm trying to say is that I still feel that there's a giant void in Canada, and I would much rather be backing guys like Brad than someone who comes a little bit late to the part. Oh, now people don't like vaccines. Okay, let's get on this bandwagon. Oh, now people like Bitcoin. Oh, now they don't like Bitcoin. Let's stop talking about it. I just cannot deal with the unprincipled kind of piece of it. But I vote for PP.
All right, Brad, give us the steel man.
Can I steel man it? Yeah, because this is an important thing for people to understand, and especially people like yourself, Sonny, that are in the position that you are rightfully upset that he's not championing these issues, which makes you think he's operating from a place of fear, or he really doesn't get it and he's not on our side, or he just cares about his pension, or whatever the things are. He's not strong enough. He's not a strong enough leader to stand up for the things that really matter. Like, he can say he's for free speech and he can make a Bitcoin transaction, but if he gets in power, who's to say he's not going to flip the script and use the Emergencies Act and all this shit? Valid. But I've watched so many clips of Pierre that I've spoken to people in a circle, not a lot, but like enough. I've gone to the rallies, I've gone to the Sat Street private event, and I got to speak to his bodyguard and his campaign guy, and I spoke to his policy manager. I spoke to just random. I've consumed a lot of Pierre content, and what I've come to realize is that Pierre is really passionate about the idea of Canada and the tradition of the Prime Minister's role in the idea of Canada, and he feels he's met with so many people across the country over the last 2 years, and he understands the struggles of the average person who are struggling to put food on the table. They're working 3 or 4 jobs. They're getting their cars stolen. Police officers are frustrated with these crime bills. There's fentanyl overdoses all over there's a lot more serious things going on in the country. And I feel like he's playing a game theory situation here where he's going to have the most amount of impact positively on the most amount of people, the most amount of Canadians by winning the election. And he has to prioritize his role as the Prime Minister and represent the people that he believes are like going back to the Magna Carta. He talks about this in his speeches impromptu about the green carpet at the House of Commons represents the fields where the peasants sort of rose up and demanded rights from the elite class, and he wants to represent that spirit of like what it means to be the king's representative in the colony of Canada, however you want to phrase it. But like he's
a lifetime politician, is he?
Yes. He's been in politics for like 20 years, and he's a monetary historian. He understands sound money. You hear him speak off the cuff for like 20, 30 minutes, no notes.
He's very intelligent.
Perfect history of a recap of the history of money, the importance of sound money, the problems with inflationary spending, the increase in the wealth gap. And I feel like the weight of the responsibility of the prime ministership to him, he's sacrificing his personal things he cares deeply about, which is the vaccine shit, the freedom convoy, Bitcoin, maybe whatever it is, to have the best chance of winning the election, to protect free speech, property rights, bring us back to a form of sound money, and have a strong dollar so that people can actually afford to live. And while we are out there evangelizing Bitcoin, which is the best choice, it's a much better choice for people, he is not one of us. He's going to be the prime minister of Canada.
But that's okay. But that's okay.
All we need. That's all we need. We just need a guy to protect free speech, property rights, and sound money, and we can do the rest. And I feel like I'm willing to take that trade-off with him because once he's in, there's not going to be vaccine mandates. We can use Bitcoin. We can have self-custody. If Carney's in, there's going to be Emergencies Act 2.0. There's going to be, it's going to be bad. And Poilievre's not going to be the perfect guy for us, advocating all of the things we want him to say and saying everything perfectly, but he's the guy to protect our ability to do the things we want to do and to keep passionately advocating that people choose Bitcoin.
So sorry. I was going to say, you asked me for my prediction, right? So just to be clear on that note, my vote's for PP, but my
PMP is Pierre Marcel Poilievre Pimp.
Okay, sure. The Albertan. My vote's for him.
For Pimp.
My prediction is, especially after talking to you guys and hearing about how dire thanks for the graphs, Jenya. Like shit. I'm kind of leaning towards corny. But here's why I'm also here for it. Again, I just told you I'm for PP. I'm on this live stream at 11 o'clock at night. I should be in bed. I'm like all about waking up early and stuff. I'm here. But what I am going to say is that the thing that excites me about corny, do you ever feel like you don't have enough Bitcoin? Yeah.
Every day.
Think about the arbitrage opportunity. If 90% of the people are sleeping out there, again, wake up early, bury your head in the sand, lift heavy weights, eat steak, kiss your little girls and your boys, and go make your best life. Because even if Corny wins, you're going to be able to walk outside. You're going to have the sun. Like I said, worst case, leave. You don't want to be here, leave. I haven't left. I'm still here. Jenya's on the other side of the fence, right? Telling me I should leave. So is everybody making fun of me, going, hey, nobody's here. I'm still here.
I'm here.
I don't want to. You're here. I don't want to leave. And I'm not going to leave. And I'm not going to leave because of the truckers. They told me and showed me that people have balls of steel in Canada. And I truly don't think PP or Corny really represent the average Canadian. I think he's not giving us enough credit. I think people are ready for the Bitcoin story. If the United States can go this far, this deep into it so quickly, bro, they sneeze, we catch a cold. We're their little brother. That's just how it works. So people are going to wake up here. I don't care about the CBC. You read its stats, 100,000 people watch it or whatever. Bro, you don't think more people follow Elon Musk? Come on, the richest man on earth. You don't think more people follow Trump? And the ideas have leaked out. It's there. It's out there. Now, if Corny wins, so be it. I think if he wins, it's probably, am I allowed to say stolen? Is that still allowed? No, maybe not. Maybe it's stolen. But you know what? I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Let things get burned to the ground, and we'll just keep Bitcoining. But again, I'm voting for PP. I'm voting for Pierre. But I'm just very fearful, especially after going through COVID, that my fellow Canadians are not ready for the truth. I mean, not by and large. There's a certain cohort, maybe 5 million, 6 million are awake, but by and large, most people are still
You
sleeping.
know what?
with the whale.
I will say, just to, I just want to like add on to Brad's point. I think that's like the way you articulated was pretty on the money. Like realistically, like you have to take a step back and like look at what is the actual kind of set of objectives and issues that he can talk about that will move the needle to make the election swing in his favor. And as much as I hate to say it, it's not a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. Like, sure, maybe tangentially, like on the margins, on the edges, fine. But it's going to be the economy. It's going to be immigration. It's going to be crime. It's going to be cutting taxes. And that's okay because, and I'm okay with that. Like, we know, like, I think we've all kind of expressed that we agree that he's directionally, aligned with us. And that's fine. He doesn't have to like explicitly say it at every rally. That's okay. I can get past that. But if he gets the major things right, then all this other stuff falls into place. And that's more where like I'm coming from, where like it's fine if he's not banging the Bitcoin drum at every rally, because frankly, like even if we have like 4 million Bitcoiners in the country, like he's not trying to win votes from those people. Like those people are already either voting for him or are somewhat aligned. Like he's trying to get votes from the people that are like a little bit more center or on the lib side, where he's trying to convince them to come over here. And that's okay. And this is just like pure political strategy 101, right? And that's fine. And I can live with that, right? Because if he comes into power and he does all the things that he says, even if he does half the things that he says, great, happy days. We're going to be in a better place. The country's going to be in a better place, right? We're going to be kind of directionally moving, in a more positive, kind of energy. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I think also, Sonny, to your point, even if like let's say Carney wins, it's all like I don't want that to happen. It's not the end of the world, but I actually think if that happens, that will activate more people more aggressively, right? And I talked about this with a couple of buddies earlier. It's just like there's this thing with like this is turning into like a boomers versus everyone election, right? And the funny thing about that is like boomers think like, oh, okay, like, oh, we're old, we have like our homes are paid off and we have our RSPs and retirement, all this shit. It's like, okay, fine, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but let's assume you do, right? Like, do you like, unless you're planning on dying in the next 4 years, you're still gonna have to live with the consequences of this election. And in 4 years from now, when there's another election, where the fuck do you think everyone else is gonna vote for? Like, it's gonna swing even more aggressively to the right. Right, if we assume that Carney's gonna do as much damage as he will, so like in either case, like I think we'll be fine. Obviously, like we're all here to support Pierre, and like we obviously hope he wins in like a runaway election on Monday. But end of the day, like we're gonna be fine. It's just a matter of like, is it gonna happen on Monday or is it gonna happen 4 years from now?
Yeah, and just to there's so many fucking awesome awakened boomers out there. Like, I know it's a constant kind of like attack on it, but it's like I love my mother so much, but oh, that PP, like it's just there's different people. Some people are deep on the spell, got like 7 of those jabs, and are in the class. Just the age generational definement is not fair. But okay, I will, if anybody is looking for something to do, I feel like, I wish I had the time, but there were some fucking awesome clips out of this show tonight that would be very helpful tools to be shared around to people who are not voted or to be made aware of, because we've reached 6,000 people have tuned in on this show. It will probably get 10 times that. Full play, not a chance, but a little clip instantly going out, hitting the right chord, can get hundreds of thousands of views and get people thinking about these actions. So please clip and share. Look to tools, look outside of the social bubbles as well. There's an app that we're using in campaign land down here called Reach. I assume it works in Canada. It's pretty awesome. And what it allows you to do is send messages directly from your phone to people in your contacts. Templated messages makes it really easy to send. You can send pictures, you can send videos. So like the direct reach out, like people see text messages 100%. Actually, it gets into them. Emails, tags on social, DMs, that stuff, like is very small kind of conversion rate. But direct messages, personal messages, calls, pouring your heart out, video messages, very, very powerful, especially, towards getting a discussion going. And, remember as well that you might think that you can convince someone in 10 seconds. That generally doesn't work like that. Try and create a space, a container with a question that opens it up. That's not a hey, or it's create that little bit of space, create that connection, and then, lead into a little bit of discussion. Small actions can make a very big difference when you have a large force of people. And guess what? There are a large force of people that are very vested in this. And, Brad has seen it out there on the ground. And I saw you, Brad, your message the other day, just let's talk. And Brad, I commit to you, let's go. I'll do this every day until Monday towards keeping this out and pushing out little clips because, I've burned all my bridges with Uncle Mark and Team Trudeau and Team Liberals. I don't give a fuck. And Bilderberg, I've called them out over and over again, but I know that their apparatus runs much larger than just this party. But it's okay. We have to fight for the truth. We have to fight for what we believe in, and really believe. I firmly believe that Canada is the most incredible country. We have so much opportunity. We have so much talent, and if we can just wake up, fucking take a break from the weed for a week or two, guys, and focus, we can crush it. We can make unbelievable action, make unbelievable value, and really be a world leader.
And on one note, I think things have gotten bad enough that maybe not all the people have woken up, but I think a lot of people, at least in my circle, that used to think otherwise, they've come around. And it's not because of Bitcoin. It's not because of the vaccine even. It's about carjackings are up 420%. They literally have WhatsApp groups with hundreds of their neighbors sharing every day break-ins in their homes, and things have gotten bad in Canada. And so we definitely need change. All right, buddy. Are we bringing this one to a close or what?
Well, yeah.
Are we going to do this daily until?
Hold on. Do we have anything else? Hold on. Breaking news, folks.
That's good. You should have done that at the beginning. Yeah. It's hypnotic.
Every Wednesday, 9 p.m., we run the Club Maha podcast. I invited Ian Carroll to join us tonight as well. He's an American. He lives in Washington. He's got a big following. He's also tuned in on all this.
I invited Nolan as well, Kyle.
Let's get more people. Let's get the discussion, because the great thing is we had 10 channels open here going out across 10 different channels to 10 different destinations. We can do that. More people can come in.
When's the next session?
Tomorrow. I mean, I would Friday. Tomorrow, daytime.
Man, I'm working.
I work too, man. 24/7. Yeah, maybe at nighttime, maybe Saturday. Yeah, let's figure something out. I'm down. Yeah, let's try and get 10 people on here.
Well, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily be 10, but yes, let's
20 then. Fine.
Let's have a good open discussion. Let's have some critical.
Let's do it. This is fun.
Some other parties too, because this was really good, and thank you everybody, and thank you to all the people who tuned in. Man, so many people
watched. That's crazy.
Thank you for the donations.
Bring it home, baby.
Crushing it
home.
Let's
Elbows down.
Elbows down.
Yeah, and remember, like, yeah, Pierre is my pick. P-I-M-P, Pimp. Like, I feel like Pimp's a good nickname for Pierre. Like, is that bad? Is that will that cause more harm than good, or is that kind of cool? Like, can you be PM? Because
It gets too close to Bitcoin.
PMP is much stronger than PP.
It's almost
Dude,
like
yeah.
elbows up, though. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna sound a little corny to the other side.
But I've been hearing these "Bring It Home" chants. That kind of resonates. I like that. No, like because it's like their 51st state and this and that, right? It's like "Bring it home, baby." I like that. I don't know. To me, it feels pretty Canadian. I think that's what I keep hearing in the background.
I like "Bring It Home."
I like it. It's like kind of
I'm
like
a
a
little
hockey,
bit, though-
a hockey vibe. Like bring it
I'm
home,
a
bring that
little bit,
Stanley
like-
Cup home.
I feel a little weird doing groupthink stuff, though. So, like, I don't really like to conform to sayings and slogans unless it's fix the money, fix the world, because I really believe in that one.
No, but you want to bring the jobs home, bring the investments home, the resources, right? The talent. I don't know. I like it for what it's worth.
And I really thought that the Sens Leafs would be like playing like on election day, but it looks like it might not even make it that far. So, that will allow people to focus as well if we can, because they happen to throw it during a time when what's going on. So, anywhoots, guys.
All right, boys, let's call it.
Freedom, baby. Let's go.
Thanks
All
for
right.
putting this
I'm
together, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. This is
Later, guys. Cheers. Bye, everyone.
And if I'm gonna play a commercial on the out here, it's for I don't think they can service Canada with that one. This one, it's really important that we take care of ourselves, take care of our minds and our bodies. And my friends over at Hana have something amazing, so check it out.
Wait, Brad, if Corny does win, will you run?
Corny
Next time?
I will run across the border.
I mean, there's a lot of people that want to run to Alberta. There's a big movement kind of that way.
Yeah, I'm from Alberta.
Yeah, I'll run to
I have a home
Alberta.
there. Hey, dude, I have a room for you in the basement.
I'll run across the Canadian border to Alberta.
Perfect. Oh, and predictions? If Corny does win, which I'm hoping doesn't, Alberta leaves
100%.
by summer.
Yeah.
That's my
Alberta's
prediction.
great.
All right?
okay. Interesting.
100%.
Yeah.
Equalization is screwed.
another-
The Maritimes
Carney
are
will-
screwed.
Hey, the year that El Salvador, on January 1st, I went on Tone Vase's show and I predicted that a nation state, and it was kind of cheeky, more like, yeah, right type of prediction, but I did predict it. So this one would be another big one. All right, gentlemen, we'll talk soon.
Peace out, boys. Have a good
All
one.
right,
You guys.
Ciao.
Big love.
Hana, adapting ancient traditions into remedies for modern living.
Peace, everybody. Let's go. Let's grow.